King Charles was 2 miles away. 2 miles. 5 minutes by car. He was on the same estate, driving around the same roads, close enough that a witness saw his vehicle moving in the direction of Wood Farm. And he did not stop. He did not call ahead. According to reports, the two brothers did not see each other, and sources say they have no plans to. Let that settle. This is not a story about distance. It is a story about a decision. A deliberate, calculated decision by a king about his own brother, made on a quiet Norfolk weekend without a single word spoken publicly. And the silence of that 2-mile gap tells you more about where things truly stand between Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and the rest of his family than any statement Buckingham Palace could ever release. But that is not the only thing that happened at Sandringham this week. Because while Charles was choosing to stay away, someone else was making the opposite decision. Andrew had a visitor, and it was not a friend, not a family member, not someone bringing comfort. It was the most senior official in the entire royal household, a man whose appearance at your door carries a very specific meaning. And when you understand who he is and what his role involves, the nature of that visit becomes considerably more unsettling for the man who received it. Let us take this from the beginning, because the picture that is emerging from Sandringham this week is one of a man living under conditions that inch closer, day by day, to something resembling a very comfortable but very real form of confinement. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has been at Wood Farm Cottage since his arrest last month. He was taken in on suspicion of misconduct in public office, questioned for 11 hours, photographed, fingerprinted, DNA swabbed, and released under investigation. Since the moment he was photographed leaving Aylsham Police Station, hunched down in the back seat of a car, he has not been seen publicly. No appearances, no sightings, no statements. He arrived back at Wood Farm and, from that point, effectively disappeared from public view. Wood Farm itself is part of the history of royal exile. It sits on a remote stretch of the Sandringham estate in Norfolk, isolated, deliberately out of the way, with views across farmland and a quietness that feels less like a retreat and more like a sentence. It was the place where Prince Philip spent much of his final years. It is a place the royal family has long used for those who have become inconvenient. Andrew knows this history. Everyone around him knows this history. And now he is living it. But even within that isolation, the rules have been tightening. King Charles, according to reports, has imposed a strict set of conditions on Andrew's stay at Sandringham. The conditions, described by sources familiar with the arrangements, are detailed and specific. Andrew has been told he is not permitted to go horse riding. This was something he did regularly and openly at Royal Lodge, and the decision to ban it is not about practicality, it is about optics. In the wake of a police investigation into his conduct, the image of a man under arrest suspicion, cantering freely around a royal estate is considered, in the words of sources, a bad look. So the horses are off limits. He is also reportedly not permitted to leave the Sandringham estate without prior permission, and the chaperone. He cannot simply walk out of the gate and drive where he pleases. He must ask. He must be accompanied. Any visitor who wishes to come to Wood Farm must be approved in advance. He does not have the freedom to decide who enters his own temporary home. Read those conditions together. No riding, no unsupervised exits, no unapproved visitors. For a man who spent decades operating with a level of personal freedom that his own bodyguards struggled to police. For a man who reportedly had female guests waved through Buckingham Palace without security checks. Who travelled the world as a trade envoy. Who lived in a 30-room mansion on his own terms for over 20 years. This is a reduction so dramatic it is almost architectural. His world has been shrinking in stages, and it is now very, very small. And then, on Monday, a car pulled up at Wood Farm. Inside it was Richard Benyon, the Lord Chamberlain of the royal household. Benyon was spotted driving out of Andrew's property, which means he had been inside. He had visited. The Lord Chamberlain is not a minor figure. He is the most senior official in the entire royal household. His role involves overseeing approximately 1,200 members of staff and serving as the principal point of liaison between the King and the House of Lords. He does not make casual social calls. He does not drop in to check whether a former prince needs anything. When the Lord Chamberlain appears at your door, it is because something formal, official, and significant needs to be communicated. What was discussed has not been disclosed. No statement was released. No spokesperson explained the visit. It was reported through observation alone, a witness noting his vehicle leaving the property. And that silence around it is its own kind of signal. Was he delivering updated terms? Was he conveying a message from the king that could not be committed to writing? Was he there in connection with the ongoing investigation or with the future of Andrew's housing arrangements before the move to Marsh Farm? There are more questions than answers, but the timing, arriving just days after the imposition of those strict new rules, suggests this was not a coincidence. Now, the detail that will stay with most people who follow this story, not the Lord Chamberlain's visit, not the rules about horse riding, the 2 miles. On Friday, King Charles arrived at his Norfolk estate for the weekend. He attended the traditional Sunday morning service at St Mary Magdalene Church at Sandringham. On Saturday, he was seen driving around the estate. At one point, according to a witness who spoke to The Sun, he was driving in the direction of Wood Farm. He was less than 2 miles away, 5 minutes by car from his younger brother, who has been living in near total isolation since his arrest, who has not been seen publicly, who is reportedly not permitted to leave without permission. Charles did not go to him. The two did not meet. Sources say they have no plans to. It is not known, as of the time of this recording, when the brothers last saw each other. Think about that choice for a moment, because it is easy to underestimate how deliberate it is. Charles was not in London. He was not separated from Andrew by a schedule, by state commitments, by the impossible demands of a working monarch's diary. He was on the same estate, on the same roads, within the same radius, on a quiet Saturday afternoon, and he drove the other way. This is the same king who, on the day of Andrew's arrest, released a statement saying the family's full support and cooperation would be given to the investigation, and that the law must take its course. That statement was notable for what it did not include. There was no warmth, no expression of personal concern for a brother, no language of family solidarity against external scrutiny. Just process, just the machinery of law, endorsed cleanly by the head of state. And now the head of state is 2 miles away, and the machinery continues, and he does not come. There is a particular cruelty in proximity without contact. It would almost be easier for Andrew if Charles were in another country, on the other side of the world, unreachable by geography. Instead, he is here. He is close. He walked to church. He drove his estate. And every decision he made that weekend was a decision not to cross those 2 miles. In royal circles, this kind of distance is deliberate and communicative. Nothing the royal family does publicly is accidental. A king who wanted to signal private support for a troubled sibling could find a way to do so without fanfare, without press attention, without it becoming a news story. The fact that it became a news story, the fact that a witness noted the proximity and sources confirmed there was no meeting planned, suggests the distance is intentional. This is the message. This is what managed separation looks like when it is being executed at the highest level. Meanwhile, Marsh Farm waits. Andrew's stay at Wood Farm is described as temporary. He is expected to relocate to Marsh Farm, a more modest property still on the Sandringham estate, at some point. What form his life there will take, under what conditions, with what degree of supervision, is not yet entirely clear. But the direction is unmistakable. Each move has been a reduction. Royal Lodge to Wood Farm to Marsh Farm, 30 rooms to 5 bedrooms to whatever comes next. And the investigation continues. Police are still reviewing documents, examining devices seized during the searches and interviewing witnesses. Former protection officers have been urged to come forward. The timeline is unknown. The outcome is unknown. Andrew remains under investigation, living under imposed rules in a house full of his late father's quiet ghosts, 2 miles from a brother who drove the other way. Somewhere in all of this, the man who shouted, "I'm the Queen's second son, you can't do this to me," is learning, day by day, exactly what can be done to him. Tell me what you think. Do you believe Charles is handling this correctly, keeping his distance to protect the institution? Or is there something cold about a king who can be 5 minutes away from his brother and choose not to go? Leave your answer in the comments. And if you want to follow every development in this story as it unfolds, subscribe now. We are tracking everything.